patients is going to be $50 a year, and the application fee for caregivers will be $25 a year. Those receiving, so there's a question about indigent populations earlier. Those who are receiving supplemental security income or Social Security disability income and veterans will receive a 50% registration discount. And what we were trying to do there is really remove any subjectivity on the definition of indigency. And that concludes the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Erin. So we'll begin our walk through the rules and pause section by section to take comments or questions from the committee. So we'll go back to the top of the draft rules, 7-1-01. We're on the definitions section. Questions or comments in that section? Very good. We're in 7-2-01, procedure for patient registration. Questions or comments here?
I'll bring it up here since the fee is mentioned here first. Why do we have to charge patients?
So the House Bill 523 requires, House Bill 523 requires us to issue cards to patients. And there's a cost associated with us building that registry. And so we did benchmark with other states. This is very low compared to what other states require. Also, one thing that is not required of patients in Ohio, that is another cost in other states you'll find, is the cost for a fingerprint-based background check for patients.
Follow up. ORS, when that registry was built, patients charged?
No.
No.
But there's a
who took the cost? Who is responsible for the cost of managing ORS?
The Board of Pharmacy maintains ORS, and it's maintained through the licensing fees of the licensees of the Board of Pharmacy. But again, I know you like to compare things, and I understand that. But in this instance, the General Assembly requires the Board of Pharmacy to operate a registry and to register the patients, and that piece does not exist elsewhere. So I think it's something that distinguishes this, and the legislation also requires that, and I won't get the language right, but to look at what other states are doing and best practices from other states. And again, as Erin pointed out, this is very common. The fee we're charging in this area is significantly lower than some states, and some states require a potential patient and caregiver to have and pay for a fingerprint-based background check. And where I think you're making a distinction and looking at the patients, that's kind of where we did. We thought that is not we weren't comfortable with that, and so that is not a requirement that we're currently recommending.
I just feel that, registries are important and should be an expectation so that it can remain safe. It's just on the backs of the patient. I suppose it would be on the back of this patient if you put the fee somewhere else, that it just trickles down to the cost of the product. But and I'm being a patient advocate here.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. And to your credit, this is very standard in the industry, and I appreciate your perspective very much, Ms. Monska. But in support of what's been done here, this is less than, normally it's between 75 and 100, and here we see it's 50 to 25, so for better or for worse.
Do you have to have a caregiver? So a person doesn't have to,
No,
right?
no.
And maybe just a slightly different perspective on the fee portion. I believe that it's imperative that this program be self-supporting, and that the costs not flow to the taxpayers through, or the residents through any other means. So the fact that we're attempting to make it self-supporting, I think is very key and very important.
Thank you.
Other comments at 10?
Go ahead, Mercy.
No, I was just going to say that I agree with that. It should be self-supporting, and I think that people who truly want and need the marijuana will find the way to pay, which I think is a nominal, somewhat of a nominal fee to do it, and it will therefore keep perhaps some of the diversion of people trying to, which we know is a huge problem in other states where it's an abuse system and people who don't really need it are using the system to get through. So when there's additional costs involved, that there's a tendency then not to abuse it quite as much as you might otherwise. So I think it's a good solution. Maybe not the best that we would want for everything, but it's a good solution for what we have.
Thank you.
My question was about the email address. If somebody doesn't have an email address, I'm thinking the elderly in particular, or even if their caregiver is somebody who is not inclined to use email, has there been alternatives considered for that situation?
At this time, there is not an alternative. There would have to be an email address established, and that email address can be a single email address. So if the patient can't access email or does not know how to access email, their caregiver could operate everything they needed to operate, access everything they needed to access from the registry on the patient's behalf.
Just seems.
Yes. So, sorry. Another key point that I failed to recognize is that by having an entirely electronic process, this is something that could potentially be completed before the patient leaves the physician's office.
Yeah.
So, it mitigates the risk of abuse and assistance offered to fill out applications that you've seen in other states. Oftentimes you'll find people engaging in predatory activities where they're charging exorbitant fees to help patients fill out applications.
And then the other thought is, obviously the legislature had an eye towards the indigent as well, and concerns that those who are indigent may not have email access and the like.
We wanted to build in, we didn't want to require the entire process be a requirement on the physicians, because we didn't want to scare away the docs. But it certainly is a possibility, and it may be a simpler one as practices mature. One of the things that we've talked about is potentially even sending email alerts to the patient if a dispensing is registered, to make sure that the patient is not being compromised or taken advantage of elsewhere, and that email communication could help that.
That is still in discussion with the developer, though, so it's on our wish list.
I'm sure.
Sorry?
There could be a built-in alternative for the situations that I'm talking about. I mean, I'm sure that as this gets more fleshed out, that'll just be something for us to think about.
The physician is going to have access to the system to register the patient initially, and I think our thinking is that in those circumstances, maybe the doc needs to just finish it while they're there, because we do think that number would be a low number, but we'll see how it plays out.
On the other end of the technological spectrum, are there any plans for mobile application instead of just a web-based application to do this registration?
The mobile application? Yeah. So right now, we don't have anything in place for a mobile application for the registration itself, so the physician could travel.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anywhere they would have access to ORS, they would.
Well, no, I was actually thinking more for the patient registration. You know, if people have their phones and they're in the physician's office and they want to register, they haven't registered yet, and hey, they need to register through the system, they may not have a computer in front of them, but if they have their phone and they can register through a mobile app, it may make it less burdensome on the physician and place the registration responsibility back to the patient.
That is something that we can certainly talk to our vendor about. I suspect that could, that could take a couple iterations before they could arrive at that solution, but it's certainly something we can take back to the vendor and talk to them about.
To be quite honest, it is the rare patient that doesn't have a smartphone.
Compared to a computer, you're right.
Well, compared to a computer, right. I actually think it's more accessible than a computer.
And perhaps you could suggest to your vendor, even not an app, but just making sure the website interface is mobile friendly.
With mobile, yeah.
Because, I mean, it doesn't even have to be an app.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be an app, it can just be a mobile.
We'll look at that.
Comments? I have a couple. This is more process related, so I'm on the slide showing we're walking through the patient, going through the registration process. So help me go back to the dispensary rules. Did we write into the rules about at the dispensary level, ORS checks needing to be done or not? I thought we talked about that.
They are going to have to pull up the patient registry. When they pull up the patient registry, it is going to be a masked ORS for the dispensary employees. So they'll see the medical marijuana history. They will not see the full ORS history for that patient.
Okay. So I want to, will that unique number that resides inside ORS for that patient stay unique to them, or does it become another new number every time they start a new supply with that physician?
The intent is that it would be the same.
Okay.
Unless they contact us and let us know there's been some unauthorized access or use.
Okay. So the need for the dispensary to weed through the plethora of the rest of the ORS data really is a non-issue. That will be blinded at the dispensary.
It won't be accessible to them.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
It will be the ORS system that will include the medical marijuana dispensing will be accessible to the physicians, so that the physician has the entire picture to the extent that we can provide it.
And so is the flip of that at the pharmacy level unblinded? Or if the patient has a pharmacy relationship and a dispensary relationship, will the pharmacy have access to see that, or the dispensary may not see their whole?
We're making it available to licensed healthcare professionals and not to unlicensed dispensary employees.
Okay, thank you.
In section E here, I wasn't quite tracking how that fits in. It says patient registration submissions must be received by the State Board of Pharmacy within 90 calendar days of registration submitted by a recommending physician.
I may need to clean that up a little bit, and I apologize for that. What I'm trying to draw here is a distinction. One of those should be recommendation, not registration, so that's a typo. And it's important to understand that the recommendation and the registration are two separate items here with very different purposes. So one is originated from your physician, and it's essentially a prescription to go pick up a medication. The registration, on the other hand, is an administrative privilege granted by the State Board of Pharmacy that comes with due process rights.
That makes a lot more sense.
And I apologize, that is a typo.
With the children, the minors getting marijuana, is there going to be a special card? Is the card, it's got to have a picture on it? Does the picture of the parent on that? Is there a special designation on the card that says, because what we found with the you guys know probably better than anybody, is that sometimes parents would actually have their child go in for whatever, actually use the opiates themselves. And I want to make sure that if a child gets a recommendation for whatever ailment, it's actually going to the child, and if the child's not allowed in, they obviously can't have a picture card.
So the recommendations for do you have recommendations around that, or
I'm asking. I mean, I think there should be on the, if it's for a minor child, there should be some kind of.
Well, the age of the child would be there
on the card itself?
in the registration.
Okay.
So when the dispensary employee scans the registration identification card for the caregiver, it's going to show that they're associated with a minor patient.
Okay.
And I guess the one exception to your earlier question is a minor child must have a caregiver.
Okay.
The picture's not on your registration card.
No, it is not.
The picture is on the
state issued ID.
Some driver's license.
Those-
or state issued.
So I'm sorry here.
Those both have to be presented at the dispensary at the time of purchase.
One that you print off the computer because you're only sending it electronically.
Yes.
And then our ID, whatever it is.
That's just a piece of paper, like it prints out of your computer that has a barcode on it.
Yes.
So to follow up on that, do we have a process, or we thought through a process, or are we going to allow replacement of these? So particularly our minor children who now sticks it in their pockets, it goes to the laundry, now it's time to go back to the dispensary and that thing is shredded. Is that now void and a new one has to be issued, or if it's lost or stolen, or what